For almost 30 years, Burt Reynolds called Sally Field the love of his life. He said it in interviews. He said it to friends. He said it over and over until it became the story everyone believed. The charming movie star and the woman who got away. A romance for the ages. Except Sally Field never said it back. She stayed quiet. She stayed distant. And when he died in 2018, she had not spoken to him in 3 decades. 30 years of silence. That is not how you treat the love of your life. That is how you treat someone you had to escape. People wondered why she would not return his affection, why she would not play along with the beautiful memory he kept trying to build. Then in her memoir, she finally told the truth. What she revealed was not a love story. It was a survival story. And it started long before Burt Reynolds ever walked into her life. The world saw them as magic together. Smokey and the Bandit made them one of the hottest couples in Hollywood. The chemistry was undeniable. The banter was effortless. Audiences watched them on screen and saw two people who belonged together. What they did not see was the imbalance. What they did not see was the control. What they did not see was a woman slipping back into a pattern she had been trained to accept since childhood. Because the truth about Sally Field and Burt Reynolds is not really about Burt Reynolds at all. It is about what happened to her years earlier. It is about the stepfather who abused her. It is about the way trauma shapes who we think we deserve to love. And it is about the role that finally gave her the strength to walk away from a man the whole world thought she should want. This is not the story of a breakup. This is the story of a woman who learned to recognize the difference between love and repetition. Between devotion and control. Between a man who says he adores you and a man who actually lets you grow. Sally Field spent 5 years with Burt Reynolds. Then she spent 30 years making sure she never had to speak to him again. That distance was not cruelty. It was clarity. And once you understand what she survived before she ever met him, the silence makes perfect sense. The real question was never why she did not love him back. The real question is how she found the courage to leave it all. Sally Field became famous very young, but the fame came with a price. In 1965, she was Gidget, the bubbly teenage surfer girl. Then she became Sister Bertrille in The Flying Nun, a young nun whose oversized hat let her fly through the air. Both shows were hits. Millions of people watched them. But in Hollywood, success does not always mean respect. And for Sally Field, those roles became a prison. Casting directors stopped seeing her as an actress. They saw her as the silly sitcom girl. The one who flew around in a nun's habit. The one nobody took seriously. She tried to get dramatic roles. She tried to prove she had range. Doors kept closing. She was still in her 20s, but the industry had already decided she was finished. She had been a star at 18. Now she could not even get meetings for the part she wanted. That rejection cut deep. It made her question whether she had a future at all. Then in 1976, everything changed. She was cast in Sybil, playing a woman with dissociative identity disorder, a character split into 16 different personalities. The role was raw. It was fearless. It was impossible to ignore. And it proved that Sally Field could act. She won an Emmy. Suddenly the phone started ringing. Directors who had dismissed her were now calling back. Famous actors wanted to work with her. One of them was Burt Reynolds. But here is what matters. Sally Field did not meet Burt Reynolds from a place of strength. She met him from a place of hunger. She had just clawed her way out of years of professional rejection. She needed proof that this new respect was real. She needed reassurance that it would last. She was terrified it could all disappear tomorrow. And into that fear walked the biggest movie star in the world, offering attention, excitement, and validation. Burt Reynolds was not just famous. He was the fantasy. In 1977, he was one of the most desired men on the planet. He had that easy swagger. That grin. That version of masculinity everyone recognized. He had just come off Deliverance and a string of major hits. And now he wanted her. For a woman who had spent years being told she was not good enough, that kind of attention felt like proof. Proof that she mattered. Proof that she had finally made it. But what looked like a fairy tale from the outside was actually something much darker. Because the imbalance existed before the relationship even began. And Sally Field was walking into it with wounds that had nothing to do with Hollywood at all. They met on the set of Smokey and the Bandit in 1977. The attraction was instant. Later, speaking to Diane Sawyer, Sally Field said they had only known each other 3 or 4 days, but it already felt like 4 years. You could see it on screen. The heat between them was real. The film became a phenomenon. It cost about $4 million to make and became one of the highest-grossing movies of 1977. At the American box office, only Star Wars made more that year. For a moment, Burt Reynolds was the most bankable star in the world. And a huge part of the film's success came from the chemistry between him and Sally Field. Audiences loved them. They saw charm. They saw fun. They saw two people who belonged together. What they could not see was the pattern already forming beneath the surface. Because even from the beginning, something felt off to Sally Field. Years later, she would say it was never just a simple love affair. There was something else woven into it. Something tied to caretaking. She was 30. He was 40. He was the biggest star alive. Yet from the very start, she slipped into the role of taking care of him. And he settled into the role of the powerful man who needed constant emotional tending. That dynamic did not happen by accident. It happened because Sally Field had been prepared for it her whole life. She had been trained to fall into exactly this kind of relationship. Trained by someone who entered her life long before Burt Reynolds ever did. In her 2018 memoir, In Pieces, Sally Field revealed something she had kept hidden for decades. She had been sexually and emotionally abused as a child by her stepfather, the actor and stuntman Jock Mahoney. She wrote that the abuse continued through her adolescence. That he would call her into his bedroom. That it stopped after she turned 14. Her mother divorced him in 1968. He died in 1989. But the damage had already been done. What made the abuse so confusing, she explained, was that Mahoney was not cruel all the time. That would have been easier to recognize. He could also be charming. Magnetic. Exciting. He could light up a room and pull people toward him. Sally Field described him as almost magical. A Pied Piper with the whole family under his spell. That is what made it so damaging. The same man who caused fear could also bring warmth. The same person who hurt her could also make her want his approval. That is how abuse works. It teaches a child to connect pain with affection. It teaches them that love must be earned from the very person causing the hurt. Later, Sally Field realized that this was exactly the pattern she had fallen into with Burt Reynolds. In a 2018 interview with NPR, she said she fell back into old patterns when she started dating him. In her memoir, she put it even more plainly. She wrote, "I had been carefully trained to fall into this." That line is everything. She was not saying the relationship reminded her of her stepfather. She was saying something far harder. She had been shaped by childhood abuse to move toward this kind of man. A man who was charismatic and controlling. A man who could be warm one minute and cold the next. A man whose approval always felt precious because it never felt fully secure. Burt Reynolds did not create that pattern. He stepped into it. And by her own account, she was ready to mistake that fit for love. Once you know what to look for, Sally Field's description of the relationship becomes painfully clear. She described the control in striking detail. In her memoir, she wrote that by the time they met, the weight of his stardom had become a way for Burt to control everyone around him. And from the moment she walked through the door, it was a way to control her. His fame did more than surround him. It gave him power over every room. It shaped the behavior of everyone near him, including hers. He also had little interest in her inner life. Field wrote that whenever she tried to talk about herself or about her sons, Reynolds would grow glassy-eyed and distracted. He drifted away when the subject was her. That kind of response sends a message. It tells a woman her thoughts do not matter. It tells her the relationship has one true center, and it is not her. Then there was the jealousy. Field said his jealousy of other men left her terrified of running into someone she might have known, whether sexually or not. Think about that. She was a grown woman, a successful actress, an Emmy winner. Yet she felt afraid of something as ordinary as greeting someone in public because she had to think about how he might react. His attitude toward her career carried the same pressure. And this became even more painful as her work grew stronger and more respected. She also described his drug use during the making of Smokey and the Bandit. She wrote that Reynolds used Percodan, Valium, and barbiturates. That portrait does not stand alone. His second wife, Lonnie Anderson, also wrote about his drug use in her own memoir and said it led to physical abuse. The man Sally Field described was volatile, insecure, and chemically dependent. And she was caught in the middle of it. Everything reached a breaking point over a script. In 1979, Sally Field was offered the lead in Norma Rae, the story of a Southern textile worker who becomes a union organizer. It was one of the greatest roles in American film. Burt Reynolds did not want her to take it. Field later described his reaction with shocking clarity. She said Reynolds objected to the role because the character had a sexual past. He did not want her playing a woman like that. Then he threw the script at her. That moment says everything. It shows anger. It shows contempt. It shows a man reacting to a woman's independence as if it were an attack on him. Field said he wanted to control her. And when she stood up to him, he told her, "You're letting this get the better of you." That is the language of a man watching his control weaken and trying to frame her strength as instability. She was not losing herself. She was finally finding herself. And she made the film anyway. Doing Norma Rae changed her in ways that went far beyond her career. When she later explained what the role did for her, her words were extraordinary. She said, "Being Norma at that time was exactly what I needed because to learn how to stand in her shoes, I could feel my own legs. I could feel my body getting stronger. I started to grow up, and I eventually just would not be manipulated and humiliated like that. And ultimately, I left." That is the turning point. By playing a woman who learned to stand up, Sally Field learned how to stand up in her own life. The role and the escape became part of the same journey. The most famous image from Norma Rae is Sally Field standing alone on a factory table, holding a sign that says Union, refusing to back down while everyone waits to see what happens next. She lived inside that stance of resistance for weeks. Day after day, she played a woman who would not stay silent. Eventually, that courage moved beyond the set. It entered her real life. Then came the Oscars in 1980. Sally Field was nominated for Best Actress. And Burt Reynolds refused to take her. He asked her twice, "You don't think you're going to win anything, do you?" So actor David Steinberg and his wife took her instead. They brought champagne. They celebrated her. And that night, Sally Field won the Academy Award for Best Actress. She won without him there. 5 years later, she won again for Places in the Heart. That was the night she gave the famous line, "You like me." By then, Burt Reynolds was already part of her past. And the woman he tried to diminish had become one of the most honored actresses of her generation.